the show today, everybody. I have Bob Glowacki, the CEO of St Vincent De Paul in Waukesha. And as a nonprofit, you might be thinking, why are we interviewing a nonprofit leader? And the answer is because they have a big mission and it takes an organization to run that. So leadership skills and sales skills and management skills are all required. Bob's got a great story to share with us. So welcome to the show, Bob.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Let's start with a little bit of your backstory. How about your personal background?
So, I grew up and still live in Cudahy, Wisconsin, which is just near the airport here in Milwaukee. I grew up in a family business. My parents ran that and actually bought it for my grandparents. So, my first experience in management and so forth was about 10 or 12 years old, helping to run a buffet line. Uh, and as I always say, when your parents are your first bosses, you can't call in sick, and there's no excuses for non-performance, and they're your most brutal critics. And so
That's
I
true.
learned a lot from the two of them. Have really been working since I was just a little kid, so all I know really is work. And so they taught me a lot, and they were wonderful people. My dad actually later became mayor of Cudahy, and so he taught me a lot about public speaking and kind of giving back to the community. My mom the same way. Um, After that, I went to Marquette University, found my MRS, my wife Krista, and
Sure.
then two kids. And from there, started in with a master's in psychology, started doing that work, and ended up in administration most of my life. So I've been running nonprofits as a CEO or executive director since I was 32 years old. And I do have gray, so it's been a long time. When I add the years up, it really amazes me. So otherwise, I'm a huge Marquette basketball fan. Very heard about this year. Looking forward to a big year next year. And that's really where my passion lies, as well as a number of friends and family that we get together with.
Great. So 32, you became an executive director. So what happened to cause you to say or have the confidence I can do this? And did you choose to do it or did you get voluntold to do it or how did that unfold?
So that actually is a funny story. So I was in my office working with a couple other people on the employee holiday party. Both of them were higher up in the hierarchy than me. It was a small agency of under $2 million. And
Yep.
so then the executive director walks in and she's like, "Well, I told them," and the other two women knew what she was talking about. I didn't. And then she said, "Well, I told the president of the board that I'm taking another position, and I do definitely think there's people on staff here who should be able to take my place." And then, like in a bad comedy, all eyes turned to me in this little small office. And I said, "Well, I guess I get what you guys are saying." And quite honestly, youth, hubris, lack of what I was getting into, I said, "Sure, I can do it."
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I had, the board just believed in me, and I actually grew up with the organization and ran it through three mergers till it went from 2 million to 11 million, and learned a lot along the way. But I had no MBA, had no business background. I had a master's in psychology, so a lot was learning on the job, learning even from my team and my board. To where now I feel a whole lot different, but it's just based on experience and time, and always trying to learn more, always trying, because when I haven't looked into things, it's usually burned me. So
Yeah.
I tend to be one, like, if it's a problem, I try to have other people handle it, but I don't let it get out of control, because I know in the end the buck does stop with me.
I mean, dig into that a little bit. So, I mean, not necessarily an example, but uh I think there's a difference between delegation and abdication. And the bigger the organization, the bigger the risk of abdicating and then blaming, right?
Yeah.
But
And
uh
yeah,
go
and
ahead.
I was surprised, actually. One person once told me, I was a board member of some sort. He goes, "I just love the way either you stay out of it and don't micromanage, but if there's a problem, you deep dive." And so, and again, you should also deep dive on your opportunities too. But for
Yeah.
me, if I see something, and again, it's a people piece. That's something that sometimes where our masters in sight comes in. Some things are over people's heads, or they've never done it before. So how do you walk alongside? Because in the end, like I said, it is your responsibility as the leader, and then it's a teaching moment. But it's also something where you start to see if the person really can't step it up, there's a concern there as to whether they're in the right position. Uh, one of my influences has always been good to great, and it's about the who and what the proper seat on the bus. And so you have
Yeah.
to ask yourself some hard questions. But in the end, you know, I always tell my staff, or as I work with, our credibility with the board of directors is based on the information that we provide. And if we are not accurate, if we are not clear, we lose credibility. And if you lose credibility, I lose credibility. And with volunteers and others, it's just so critical because they are giving their time and effort and their reputations to the organization. And you need to take that very seriously. Just because I've always felt just because you're a nonprofit doesn't mean you don't do things with excellence. It's a tax status. It's not a cop out.
Yeah, and it's not a organizational structure either. Like you guys can't do your mission if you don't take the business side of being a nonprofit seriously, because nothing gets done for free, right? Like the amount of impact that you guys can have in the community is directly related to budget activities and how much you can grow and fundraise. And I mean, one of the differences for y'all is revenue generating versus donation. Like I can't remember the exact name of the two different kind of wings, but I think for those of you that are listening to this thinking, oh, that's just a nonprofit. If you look at the nonprofit United Way in Dane County, for example, had a $20 million a year budget because it was a big organization having a huge impact. And that kind of uh, team, staff, organization requires leadership skills. So tell us a little bit more. I know when we did our pre-call, you told me some things about St. Vincent's. I'm like, wow, you guys are doing a lot. So tell us a little bit more about what all you guys do.
And again, when you talk about revenue generation, this is so important because probably about 5% of our revenue of our $10 million budget comes from fundraising, although I want to grow that and always open to donations. But secondly, it's really about our businesses. It's our 3 thrift stores and a thriving recycling operation behind the scenes that covers my costs, the cost of our other staff, that we deliver services in supporting individuals who are we're doing some spiritual as well as support for those who've been recently incarcerated at the Waukesha jail. We provide financial education through our Getting Ahead program. It's completely free to those who attend. We also provide housing support. And the other part that's just mind-boggling is between what we do at the council, we call the council level, and our conferences, which are our local Catholic parishes. We gave back to our community over $2 million last year, and that's Waukesha County. And rent assistance was as high as about $700,000.
It's
And so
amazing.
I think it also speaks to the challenge we're having in the affordability crisis, that in one of our most affluent communities in the state, we still have that kind of need for people to stop and avoid eviction. So I can't say enough about our members and our team that make that happen. And the organization, since COVID, after COVID, and the opening of our Pewaukee store especially, has doubled in size. That we're over $10 million. And so for me, it's interesting because I put my business cap on, my fundraising cap, and then my management cap. I'm using them all now. And it's just really a lot of fun to think about how we can grow our shoppers, our donations, both in their donation center and financial donations. And so we just really believe the sky is the limit. And the great part is I have a board who's like, what more can we do for those in need?
Yeah.
It's not about keeping the bottom line at a certain level. It's about running it as a business as best we can, so that we can actually, provide returns to the community. And we pay even our retail staff receive 15.50 an hour to start, healthcare benefits, 401k. So we're treating them with great respect too, living the mission on both sides of our organization.
And again, if you're listening, that's a real business, right? Like we use the labels of the tax status to your point earlier, but you're running a big operation and um, and in a growth uh, perspective as well, right? So
Yeah.
tell us about a couple people that have pushed you, inspired you, like caused you to be on this growth path.
So I came up with 3 people for different reasons. So one
Cool.
is my dad. My dad taught me how to speak. He taught me how to make speeches. He was When he passed away, I don't know how many people sent me, God and Cudahy don't make junk. And it was his way of telling every kid he met at their high school graduations or other things, one, God mattered, and number two, they mattered. And
Yep.
especially as we see what goes on in social media and how people are constantly thinking what's wrong with them, it was his way to reinforce them. And he's 91 years old, and people were still quoting that on Facebook and everywhere. So it was always his way. He taught me ways to get attention when I speak. That it's not something I usually don't have notes. I just do whatever is in my heart at that moment, and I think that's what I learned from him. The other one friend is a friend of mine who I work with at Easter Seals. She was in the national staff. Actually, both were. One was Pat Jones, and she told me how to be logical and use business instincts. She was always the one of how to run your business in the most appropriate way for the good of those you served. But knew if you ran things as a nonprofit basis, you'd be out of business. So you do need to run it like a business with the heart and soul of a nonprofit. And that's a tax state. It's not a way of doing business. So she
Yeah.
really taught me that and always had good advice when I needed it. As we grew, doubling in size, you're always figuring out what am I supposed to do now? What am I supposed to do now? And so she would always tell me that kind of the staff we needed, and she was a great incisive person on staff. You can go, Bob, that's not the right person. I'm like, really? Come on, Pat. She's like, trust me. And she was always right. It was very annoying, I told her. And then finally, there was Bob, who was also for an Easter Seals, and he talked to me about heart. He was a great networker. He had the horrible job of, not a horrible job, but he was a national rep that had to go and maybe talk to boards that weren't doing what they were supposed to, or whose
Mhm.
bylaws were in violation. And
Yep.
somehow he could do it where everybody loved him. That the whole organization was just. When I joined that organization through a merger, everybody knew who he was, and everybody thought he was a good man, and they trusted him. And for me, that was something that was always important to continue networking whenever I'm up, like I'm now I'm part of an affiliated organization too, that it's like never be a lone wolf, that I don't need anybody else. I'll do it myself.
Mhm.
And so I give the time to our national organizations when I can in speaking, or if I can teach another member how to do things, we're open with that knowledge in every place I've been. And sometimes staff would criticize me and say, "Why are you spending so much time caring about others?" Like, because I'm only as good as my brother and sister organizations. If the Detroit organization looks terrible, we look terrible. And because again, with the people who are listening now, they don't think of either St. Vincent De Paul or Easter Seals as an outfit. They think of it as a group. And so if we're strong across the country, that's only going to help me locally. So I always had that vision back and forth, and it's paid great dividends in friendships and relationships and helping me to make good decisions.
Yeah. You said earlier you speak from your heart. I don't think you can fake it. Like the Bob that you said was going in to have tough conversations, probably people could tell he was there trying
Yeah.
to create something good for them and not just yell at them, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
it's,
he loved it, and he could just kind of say the right things to the board chair and everything else. We're not here to cause trouble. We want to do this because sometimes it was really hard for people to realize what seemed like a good thing was really not, or you were short circuiting uh, structures that protect you. And I think that's the part.
yeah,
So many times compliance isn't fun. But I usually say, hey, what's the best that can happen, and what's the worst that can happen? So, do I hire my friend? What's the best that could happen? They could be awesome, but if they aren't very good and I have to fire them, I know I lose a friend and I look really bad. So those are the kind of things where I'm like, I use that test regularly, like how good
yeah,
this could be and how bad it could be. And the bad, if it's really bad, I'm like, no, we need to move on from that option. The negative is too strong, and probably the top is probably not going to happen.
yeah. I don't know if when our pre-call, if I told you we work with a rescuing leftover cuisine in New York City, and they're like on the cusp of uh, big growth, but it's run by a young guy, and you can tell when you talk to him that food security is like that's it for you.
Mhm.
Here's my life scale. Food security takes this much of it, and he has to run the business, has to run it like a business because they have such a huge mission. But when you see somebody that's hard, they can't lie about it. It's like you just can't lie about your purpose in life. So,
Right.
what's your biggest learning so far been in leadership as a business organization leader?
Uh, I think, my biggest learning really was when I came, and it's an oldie but a goodie, but really good to great. I really did find that, and maybe it just spoke to me because that's the way I was raised, in many of its concepts. And I pretty much read every book after that too. And even the ones where I like, too big to fail and things like that, where it's just like these are great learnings, because they're, again, it shows you two companies in a sense that are could be in the same place and had the same opportunities, and one went one way and one went the other.
Right.
And there was especially the part about the who. It's about who you have and are they in the right seats on the bus. If you don't have the right people or you don't treat them right, the chances of success are low. And I've even developed over time. Even if somebody, nobody likes to terminate someone, but sometimes you're even doing somebody a favor. They're
Yeah.
they're if they're not doing well, they're not oblivious to it. They go home every night feeling like they're not doing well. And maybe it's just the organization has changed or the mix or the skills aren't there that you need. And letting them move on is actually is you're doing them a service. Most of the time that when that happens, the person is finds a job and is 10 times happier than where they were, where every night they had to come home and feel like they were a
Yeah.
failure. And you're just putting off the inevitable. And you're not only obviously you cause yourself pain because you also as the leader go home every night frustrated and angry and thinking what more could I do to get this person to where they need to be, and maybe it's just not the good match, and for it kind of it's just time to say we need to move on, let that person move on. And so the who is just so critical. And even like sometimes too I would add that even with the who, it's taking care of your who's too.
Yeah.
Those people who they're such hard drivers, making sure you're saying, hey, what's going on with family? You're
Yeah.
here a little bit late. I think there's opportunities where again, both of us being a little older, maybe we've made some mistakes, and trying to
Hey.
share that, yeah, hey, trying to share it with those who might be a little bit younger, going, as in my life, going at, being now in my 50s and going to a number of funerals, rarely do the people that where you worked come to see you at your funeral. It's
Yeah.
the people that you made impact in your daily life. That's who you remember. I had board members who would leave organizations and retire, and in 3 years they couldn't even get a sponsorship anymore, and nobody would take their calls because it's like people had moved on. You're not here anymore. So I think putting, again, being in a values-based and religious-based organization, putting your, putting your heart where it really belongs and what really matters, you can't lose track of that because in the end,
Yep.
your soul, your heart, your family, at the end of life, when you look back, that is what you're going to remember. All the titles and stuff. Actually, my dad, we donated most of the plaques he got when he retired. He didn't even hang them up when he left. And he had dozens of plaques from organizations. He
Yeah.
retired, said, don't put that up in the family room. I have no interest. Put it in a box. And not that he wasn't proud of them, but, there were other things that were more important to him.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about what matters because what we know is it's the human part that makes the other parts less difficult, right? Like a lot of,
Mhm.
especially, I remember when I was a young leader, firing somebody, I wouldn't do it until I got pissed. Like I'm so angry at this person, right? But now what we know is, hey, you can have a conversation with them and say, I'm not willing to wreck our friendship. This is
Right.
not working. I got to let you go work someplace else. And, coaching people through firing friends and employees where the relationship doesn't get hurt because it's still your job as a leader. If somebody's not able to, do what they're supposed to be doing, you have to make the decision, but you don't have to be obnoxious about it. You can say, hey, Mike, look, like I'm the one who has to tell you that this isn't working and it's not worth me wrecking our friendship. So
Mhm.
you got to go work someplace else.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, you give the person a chance to report performance improvement plan, some other things, and again,
right.
maybe your business has changed, that their skill set just doesn't fit anymore. I think you can outgrow employees, that they were great at a certain level, but now you're larger, you have more things going on, and they just can't make the connections and things like that to make it happen. And I've
Yep.
seen it, and again, through the mergers I did where we were doubling in size, I would see a great performer just not perform anymore because all of a sudden it wasn't the same. They were working. They were maybe a big fish in a
That's
small
right.
pond,
Right.
and so, but you're doing them a favor, you're doing yourself a favor. And again, you got to think of your organization, whether it be your mission or customer service, things like that. you can't afford to have underperforming where it starts to harm your brand, because that is just so key that people think. I'm really proud of when I hear about St. Vincent De Paul in our stores. Some people say they're clean, the staff are friendly. One of our staff were just telling us yesterday that she had to be called down to the customer service desk so people could, because they wanted to say in person how nicely they were treated here, and there's their
That's
favorite place
awesome.
to shop. Yeah, and like I said, you can't replace that. That's
Right.
the stuff that keeps people coming back, and that's when you got to keep good people and let them recognize how special that is when somebody wants to take time out, make you come down to give you a compliment.
Yeah. How about the flip side? What's your biggest challenge, Ben? And what have you done to overcome that?
Um, I think that, my biggest challenge, I'll go back in time when I was, when I first started, and where I think I did learn at that point, it was lonely at the top. So our first merger that I did in one of my organizations, we were getting near the end, and three staff who were close to me, and some of the two of them were the women who were in the office that said I should go for the job.
Yeah.
And I was doing this merger in my first year of being an executive director at the time, and they took me in the office, and they said, "We don't like what you're doing. You're going to ruin us and everything else."
Yeah.
And again, I'd only been there a year. I still think of the hubris. What was I thinking? In my first year, I was driving a merger. In my second year, and I came home. I literally cried at the kitchen table because I felt a tu brute. I really felt like Caesar, like I'd been stabbed in the back. That how could they doubt my love of the organization, the people we serve, and everything else? And I went to work really angry the next day. And they came in and we talked, but I said, this is the right thing to do. We are just this close to finalizing things, and it's right. And it turned out to be great for the organization, great for the people we serve. But going through that process, I learned obviously there's a lot of discomfort in any major change, and not that you ignore people here; it's a data point. But in a major change, you really are alone. And almost I did two other mergers. Every time there is that point which somebody wants to pull out, they get cold feet, they go whatever, and
Sure.
you have to push that through. But in the end, you are alone in the sense of it's your decision to make,
Yep.
and you're convincing a board, which is not easy, and that's why it's important to have a coach, a network, things like that to go outside yourself, because I think it's just critical. Again, at that time, both Pat and Bob were people I called after those meetings, even though I was kind of merging into their family, and they said you're doing the right thing. This is typical and everything else, and that's kind of it's so important to have that network to be able to ask somebody if they've been there before, to
Yeah.
kind of give you confidence that it's not unusual. And now that I've been through that and two others, I know when change happens, and there's always going to be a pushback, and you better be ready for it and have your ducks in a row. But know that it's going to happen, and some people are going to leave. But you better, if it's for the right reasons and for the good of the organization, you're going to have to push through and accept there will be some losses.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, somebody might be a great person in a $2 million organization and wants nothing to do with a $10 million organization,
Right.
or be great at a 10 and wants nothing to do with the $100 million. So
Right. Yeah.
I mean, we're all people. It's called perturbation. It's what happens when you're used to things in your comfort zone, and when you get to the edge of it,
Right.
it's artificially scary.
Hmm.
And to your point, like, hey, here's what's going to happen on the other side. Um, it's not going to, nobody's jumping off airplanes here. We're just
Right.
changing a business process,
Right.
and so that's cool. So what's the next big thing for St. Vincent's and Waukesha?
Well, I mean, if anybody's been watching, the thrift industry is just exploding. I was looking at a Capital One report that they did on the thrift industry, and it's up about 20%. Over that, they predict that over the next 5 years, a 20% increase in this industry. And so, whether it be us or other names like Goodwill, we're doing very well right now. And so for us, I think it really is to capture that growth, how to make sure that our stores stay full of donations that are interesting for people to see and to go through, keeping that really positive customer experience, and then finding new avenues of which we can show our impact. I think for St. Vincent de Paul, I'm sure when many people heard that title, they said, "What? What is that, like the Knights of Columbus?" So that's the other part. We need to get our name out there, and that's my job. That's why I'm on with you. that St. Paul is just it's a very active organization, especially here in Wisconsin. Our Green Bay, Appleton, Madison, Milwaukee, and us, among others, they're all doing this good work. The numbers I gave about what we give back to our community are similar across the state.
Yeah.
So if people really are passionate about, like, I care about my local community, I care about my local neighbor who's struggling, it's the only organization you can give to that every dollar is going to stay in your community. It's going to help somebody somewhere in your zip code. And there are many great nonprofits, but most of us have very little government funding. Our stores keep us going, and they also are our growth engine. As well as a way to get our name out. Most people, one of our Vincentians who's a member, we have wonderful members in our local parishes. We have over 300 active members and other 500 associates here in Waukesha alone. But she said, I'm with St. Vincent De Paul. Like, what store do you work at? And it's like, no, she's one of our members and a retired public health nurse that at one point I was talking to her was working with 5 different people who were struggling maintaining their apartments. And she, in her retirement, was taking time out to help those people. It takes a special type of person to join St. Vincent de Paul who really care about their local neighbors and are willing to make this another passion in their life. And I'm always humbled to be around them. I also feel I need to go to confession afterwards because I don't do anything as good as they do as far as their passion for neighbors in need. And so it's a great local organization. So if your church has a fifth collection and you're Catholic and it says St. Vincent de Paul, trust me, good work is being done with it. Be a little extra generous there because it's going to go to members of all faiths, of any color. We don't look at all that. We just look at the person who's looking at some help at a time of crisis.
Yeah. So for those of you that are listening, this is actual marketing, right? I mean, I mentioned RLC earlier. In New York City, there's people that will write $100 million check to an art organization without thinking twice, but they won't give $1,000 to food security. So in your world, it's going to be the exact mirror of what happens in, to people that are listening to this on target market. In your case, it's the people that believe in the St. Vincent's mission, and somebody who's going to give to St. Vincent's here may or may not give to supporting art, right? So that's the same as the customers in the profit world. If they want to buy remodeling from Joe Smith, they're not going to also pay Steve Jones, right? They're going to find like that. That's the essence of marketing, is your message. And your comment about keeping your name out there is interesting because, I mean, St. Vinny's been around forever. I remember my mom talking about, hey, we got to take a load of stuff to St. Vinny's when I was 7 years old.
Right.
And still, right, the marketing opportunity is keep the name out and make sure people are clear on what your mission is. So
we want to drive donations. We want to drive membership. We want people to engage with us as volunteers because we do feel we're a movement. We're actually 150 years old as an organization that was founded in France. So we got a lot of life left and there's a lot of need. So it's a joy to be able to share our philosophy, our charism, and ask people to join in of all faiths.
Yeah. I got one last question that I never tell people I'm going to ask them. And that question is there something you wish I would have asked you?
I think, the only thing I would say for, we talked about it a little bit in the pre-call too. And I know I go through it. Being a leader, sometimes you feel like an imposter, that you're not smart enough, you're not good enough. It's the opposite of that Saturday Night Live sketch back in the day. And you are who you are, and I do think from a faith perspective, God gave you certain gifts, and it's how you put those in His service or in the service of others. So don't feel as if you're an imposter. Think about it, pray about it. Again, get a network of people to talk about it, because sometimes we really can only see each other through the reflection of a mirror. And sometimes it takes somebody else to kind of point out what our strengths are. And that certainly doesn't mean we don't have weaknesses. But you don't need to be a hero. You don't need to do it completely alone. And so developing that network is the sanity. Whenever I'm overwhelmed, I have a certain friend from we ran another nonprofit, and we get together. And even recently, she did some free training with my board for me. And even though I'm like, I can pay you something, she said, no, I want to do it for you. And but it's my sanity check in, because I know it's also a place whatever I say is going to stay there. And but it does help me to get it out as to what my
Yeah.
concerns are and fears and whatever. And then she'll be one to tell me, you're doing just great, you're doing the right thing. And sometimes we all need to hear that, no matter how strong we are. But you can be good
Yeah.
enough. Just keep on focusing on being your best.
That's like your dad said, God didn't make junk. You're here
Correct.
for a reason. So,
Mhm.
all right, Bob Glowacki, CEO of St. Vincent De Paul and Waukesha. Thank you for being on the show today. It's been great to get to know a little bit more about you guys.
Thank you, Mike.